a slight increase for February, it's a positive. It's very slight, but it is an increase. It's off the trend line a little bit from the prior year. We're still well below what we budgeted, but at least it's an increase. Okay.
There we go.
So you can see we're at 6503.43 for February. We'll get the preliminary numbers for March from Rosemary next week. So we'll be able to see if that continues, which is a positive for the district, considering where we started with our budget. Yes?
Is that how did we get the people moving in? Is that
Possibly.
So they're residents, they're not out of district transfers.
Well, I'd have to check with Rosemary to find it exactly.
Well, it's 13 kids. So
Yeah, it's
they're
not
gonna be sprinkled around.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that is being questioned, though, is a little bit about what's out on OSPI's website regarding the district. Last year we had this year when we did our budget, we had to do the F195F, which was a forecast, and we had to do the current year budget along with 3 additional years of where we thought we were going to be at. So this next slide is what we submitted in August for where we thought our enrollment was going to be at. It's hard to see. I apologize for the size.
It's just sideways.
The angle on it. So you can see the column, the current year budget, we were at 6670. That excluded Running Start. You have to remember the skills center's included in there, and there's $4.2 million that we get for Running Start and Skills Center. That people need to realize that's just pass-through money that we don't get. Okay, so then you look at 1920 all the way through 2022, and these were basically small increases between 150 and 175 students each year. So then OSPI decided, given some of the bargaining agreements that went through, they wanted us to update the 4-year forecast. So they opened it up at the end of September. We made a decision to update our enrollment, but we did not update the 4-year forecast for revenues and expenditures. So when you take a look at this, you're going to say, hey, wait a second. You look at current year budget, and then when we get to the slide, you'll be able to see how it looks for the revenues and expenditures. They won't tie. This is a data input sheet only. It's not a formula driven. Enrollment has nothing to do with revenues and expenditures in the 4-year forecast. So when we revised, and I'm sorry, this is actually right out of the F195 OSPI's website, you can see that we had budgeted 7,049.22 students for 18-19, which we know we didn't come close to that. We were at 65, and really the 6670 is a better reflection of really where we're at 6,500. Okay? But then, so I took it upon myself to let's see where the enrollment. I'll do enrollment projections for the next 3 years. So I adjusted enrollment. So you look at 1920, you're seeing 6,002 compared to 6,670. That's a huge decrease. You got to think about it. We only had 6,400 that actually showed up in October, on our first October count. Okay? So yes, I adjusted that. That has no bearing, those next 3 years, on the revenues and expenditures that we forecasted. This is just projections. Go ahead, John.
So Jim, you adjusted, looks like from 2019-20 forward. Is there a reason you didn't adjust the current year?
Yeah, the current year OSPI locked that. They would not let us adjust that because the board had approved the FY95 on August 28th. August 31st, we had to have it submitted. It was approved. OSPI says we're not going to allow you to adjust the 18-19, the current year. So that was, we weren't able to adjust that. So I could not take that and say, our October count, this is what it is. It had to say what we actually submitted to OSPI.
So if someone was looking at this data and saying, gosh, Tumwater is deflating their enrollment projection, your answer to that would be, I had to, for 2019 moving forward, based on our actual enrollment experience, OSPI wouldn't let me adjust for the current year. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
And looking back at it, I know that, talking to a couple other districts, they just stayed with their F195F, what they initially submitted.
Okay.
Looking back at it, I wish I would have just left it alone.
Okay.
But I made a decision to adjust the enrollment. So then you go to, I have a slide here that kind of shows you This shows the current year budget, which was $6,670. I'm excluding the bottom number. I'm not going to talk about the $7,049 because that has running start, the dropout, ALE programs. We still get funding for those, but really what's in the classroom. If you look at what our actual is, you know, it's right now it's the actual average for January, February is 65.16. That's where the number's at right now. So you can see there was basically 150 students, 153 students that, what we budgeted to where we're actually at. And that impacted us, and I've shared that information. If you look at what we originally forecasted for 1920, we know it's not gonna be 6841. The preliminary number right now, using the cohort report that this district uses to say kindergartners and following them all the way through until they graduate, I'll just throw the number out there and we're gonna have more of a discussion because we know it's not gonna be that low. It's 6,121.
But that number would not include new market.
Does not include
Running
new
start.
market. So take 300 off at 6516, which includes new market. So now you're at 6216, which is almost identical to what was in the earlier slide on the change in the projections. So we're gonna be within 90 to 100 of what the cohort report shows. Okay, we're gonna have more discussion on that. It's a very preliminary number. So, again, so I want to talk about this too, because in our 4-year forecast, as you remember when we did the revenues and expenditures, some of the assumptions that were made were we're going to increase by 9 kindergarten teachers to get the K-3 compliance. Well, the top is OSCI's K-3 compliance tool that just came out, all right? And it shows 2.66 teachers that we're going to have to increase. Remember, and you'll see it in the next slide, we had 9 extra teachers, which was we estimated about $1 million increase. However, looking at the current enrollment projections, we're increasing a little bit, about 26 students, so we're going to need 3.58 teachers to be in compliance with the K-3 requirement. Do we have the space for that? Not sure, but we'd actually add to 3.58. So taking that information, I wanted to continue to update the 4-year forecast. So the 4-year forecast, as you see where it says expenditures, regular instructions, you see 2.5 increase, and that's some bargaining agreement increase that we've included in there for the projecting out. But we've changed to 4 K-3. I didn't do 3.5. And so we reduced the expenditures for the 1920 for regular instructions by $600,000. Okay, to reflect that. So now we're only really sitting at 5.6 over expenditures. We're going to continue to update this 4-year forecast as information comes in. You have to think about it. I'm going to talk about 5313, the Senate bill, and what they're doing with the legislation right now. They're changing the levy. They're the 3,500 or 20%. So this is going to continue to change as we continue to get more information and as we continue to go through the budget process. But I just wanted to keep updating the board on this to say any information that we do change, I want to share it with you. So if you have any questions, you can ask and we can get you a response.
If we don't hire those 4 teachers, how much money do we lose for that K-3 class size compliance?
At one point, I believe it was like 1.5, don't quote me on it, I think it's 1 million.
Over the cost of finding the money for the 4 teachers.
Yeah,
we
it
lose
is.
more than that.
And I think I've shared it at other board meetings. Districts are looking at that saying, do we want to do the K-3 compliance, which this is not good for the students,
No.
these young students, or do we just pay overload? Because it would be cheaper for us to pay overload than hire new teachers. And some districts are looking at that, but that's something that it's not good for a K-3 environment.
No. Okay.
So again, I want to share with you the 1920 through 21-22. Those numbers are based on those assumptions that you see in yellow. Okay? We did not adjust the F-195F for those revenues and expenditures. So when you see a decrease in enrollment that we did up above, I did not change the revenues and expenditures. If we would have done that, I can tell you that bottom line would not look pretty for us, and we did not want to concern people as much as that, because enrollment is tough to determine, you know? And so why not just stay with our assumptions on our financial?
I would just add for now, for the same reasons Jim mentioned, the legislature is working on certain initiatives. And while they have talked about a levy reform bill in the Senate, that has a long road still to go to see a possible approval. Last week, the legislative reports you've seen indicate that the state's revenue forecast is not even enough to pay for maintenance level funding of what currently exists in law, let alone the millions, I will say billions, that have been asked for by all the different state agencies, including K-12. And so legislators are now concerned that if they want to support new spending, that's gonna have to come in the form of new taxes of some sort. Will they look at levy reform as a new tax? I don't know, that's a political question. We're hopeful that some sort of levy reform comes, because I will guarantee you that the red numbers at the bottom of this page will grow if they do nothing, because this does not reflect an enrollment adjustment that will need to be made. This does not reflect the increased healthcare costs that they proceed with said. This does not include the increased pension costs that are inevitably going to come to school districts to say, you pass through these pay increases, and to fund the retirement system, now and in the future, we're gonna have to raise the amount you pay for each employee that you employ. That happens almost every session. I just wanna reiterate what Jim said before. That four-year forecast will continue to change, and it should, because the factors that impact it keep changing.
Correct. Thank you. So as you can see, this is the four-year forecast. It was adjusted, and I leave the 4% so the board remembers that we changed our minimum fund balance to 4%. You can see though the required spending reductions is $5 million now. That's a reduction of $600,000 because of those K-3 teachers, and so that's a reflection in there. John has shared a lot of this information that's on this slide. In that four-year projection right now, we have not included the 3-point average step increase for TAP, because they have steps and there's difference there. And you saw this at the last presentation. So those have still not been included in the four-year forecast. There's some information that we're still trying to gather. The SEB, so if you look at the governor's budget, there's a multi-tool out there. It says $1.6 million in revenue they're gonna give this district for SEB. Okay. Where'd they come up with the number? Because we're estimating $750,000 in costs. So we're not sure where those numbers are coming from. And I've talked to OSPI, Michelle, on a lot of the information tools that they're coming out with. The enrollment assumptions is really the one that is gonna drive the revenues. That's really where the state funding comes from, and some of the federal and the special ed. So enrollment assumptions, we have to continue to look at that and make sure that we're gonna put good numbers into our budget. We do not wanna overestimate and have that 2.7 million decrease in January. So I do want to show you, this is a preliminary fund balance. We went down only $325,000 this month into the fund balance. We're basically parallel now to the 2 years ago fund balance. In March, we'll cross that line. And I just wanted the board to continue to see this so you're informed of where our fund balance is currently at. So in April, when we get our tax payment, we will not see that bump go above those 2 years. It will not happen. Okay. So the district, and I can tell you the building administrators, I met with them. I continue to meet with them on a monthly basis, telling them where we're kind of at. And they're all doing a very good job with their building budgets, watching their costs, maintenance, grounds. They're doing the exact same thing. So the district understands where we're at. We're trying to control our costs as much as possible. Everything we say this year helps us next year. So some other information. This is a multi-tool, very similar to the multi-tool that went out a year ago. What I want to point out is the 7,049. Okay, I talked to Michelle at OSPI regarding that number. I said, why are you using 7,049? She goes, Jim, we used your budgeted number. We put that in there. Once the legislature passes a budget, we're going to update that total enrollment so we do not have that that large of a number in there, okay? But they just want to show what the governor's budget, the impact to Tumwater School District would be. I can tell you, all the years that I spent at the state government, the governor's budget usually doesn't get passed, okay? So this tool is really not an effective tool, but it's sitting out there, and I just wanted the board to realize the 7,000 that they're putting out there are budgeted numbers from last year for enrollment. You have to also think about some of the basic ed programs that are in there. Again, CTE, the Skills Center, Running Start, some of those dollars are just passed through, okay? Okay, so I just want to, again, start the conversation. You see the 7,049, and it's made up of this number that if you went to our F-195, you can see this is exactly the enrollment number. It's on page 10 of the apportionment report that the district gets every month, and this is the November numbers that are sitting there. If you look at the January and February, page 10, those numbers will not reflect that because now they're updating it based on the average enrollment. Actual average enrollment, okay? So that's on page 10. Anybody can go look at that and see it. Just go to the OSPI's website, all right? Senate Bill 5313 allows districts to choose between the school board. In the bill, it says the school board will decide, do you want to do a 20% levy or a $3,500 per student? Okay, it provides LEA in there, but I can tell you if you hit the 3,500 and even close to the 20%, we won't get any LEA. But we're still doing some calculations on that. But it also says required, should school districts LEA decrease from 1920, the school district will receive the 2019 LEA. So here's the table spreadsheet that they put together for us. I've updated to reflect really what our district levy base is, what our assessed valuations are. They use some numbers that, based on Thurston County and where we're at. So we have actual numbers in here. I want to show you, so if you look at the levy percent, it's the fourth line down, it says 20%. So there's the 20% option, okay? So the maximum by the percent for 1920 would be 14,275. The voters of this district voted 17,200,000 for a levy. So we're not gonna get there. All right, it's gonna help us, but are we gonna be able to even pass a levy at that rate? Because if you look at it, that's $2.58. The state's collecting $1.50, and then we have our bond amount of $3.46. We're pushing almost $8 per thousand. If I was a taxpayer that I had to pay my property tax, I would say I'm not doing that. I want you to see the $1.50. Okay. Okay, let's go to the 3,500. Puts us at, a total of $23,000,009, well over what the voters approved for, but at a 4.32 cost per thousand. Add in the state, add in the bond, I mean, we're well over $8 per thousand. So, I have no idea what to do here.
Remind me tomorrow.
Exactly.
I'm done, I guess, no. So, this tool is, the impact of this and what's gonna happen, we're still analyzing it. It passed the substitute bill passed the Senate. I believe it went over to the House now. But I'm not sure how the state's gonna afford this. Looking at where the dollar's gonna come from. And where the taxpayer's gonna say, I'm not gonna pay that on my property tax.
Yeah, the latest conversations we've had with legislators say the 3,500 per student won't happen because it well exceeds what voters have approved. And politically, they say there's no way even Democrats are gonna approve a tax increase beyond what voters actually voted on. That would exceed the former levy limit. The other political concern is one of the fundamental premises of the McCleary case was an over-reliance on local levies. So on the Republican side of the politics, they're all saying, why in the world would you do any of this after we just solved, as they like to say, the McCleary issue? So it'll be interesting to watch.
So this is the type of information that impacts that four-year forecast on the revenues and expenditures. Enrollment, what legislators are doing, bills that they're gonna pass. So we'll just continue to present this information to the board as it comes comes out, so that you're informed of some of the financial impact it could have on the district. This would definitely benefit it. One of the things is the 3,500. If you read the bill, it doesn't say, can you go below the 3,500? Can you say, I only want to do 2,000 students? When you do that, though, you still have to think about the estimated LEA and what that impacts us, the local effort assistance. So there's still a lot of discussion. I believe that's it. Any questions?
Jim, how, this last week, I had a chance to talk to people in other districts a little bit. And they're all got the same thing, all this false information, I don't know if it's false, but inflated information comes out. And if I'm on the side where I'm looking for money and I wanna give our custodians a big raise, and I look and say, well, you guys got all that money, how can we get to where the numbers that we see and that we all work from are real numbers and not just numbers?
Well, if you take a look at it, so we did a budget.
Yeah.
It's a plan, okay? And people are relying a lot on that budget as, this is why they have money, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry, but it's just a budget. Really what you need to take a look at is the actual revenue that we're getting and the expenditures, where the fund balance is going, okay? If it's false information, then our fund balance wouldn't be crossing the last 2 years' lines, okay?
Yeah.
There's no way that we can hide money, underestimate revenues. If you look at it, Thurston County is really our bank, all right? They say we have this much cash. They're our third party. They get audited, they have to reconcile their cash. If you look at our GL, our cash are in balance. So if they're saying we have this much cash, which is really a reflection of our fund balance, and our GL says this, then it's not false information if you're looking at actual data. Okay, if you're looking at the budget status report and you're saying, okay, yeah, it does have a budget column, but what is the actual year-to-date revenues and how is that impacting fund balance? Okay, so you can take a look and say, okay, their enrollment's really low on their FY95F, so their revenues are gonna be much higher for the next, for 1920, but that's not reflected in there. And I tried to explain to you, those two are not linked together. It's an Excel spreadsheet that districts use just to do data entry into the FY95F, okay? So, there's a lot of information out there. I can tell you, school financing's not easy. I mean, you have levies, you have state funding, you've got CTE, you've got Running Start, you've got LAP, you've got Highly Capable, you have Title, you have SPED. I mean, there are so many financial revenue sources to try to understand every one of those, and to look at a number and say the district has all this money, they can do that. Look at the fund balance and look at the trend on the fund balance. That's your checkbook balance at home. If that checkbook balance continues to go down, you have to make some decisions in your home financing to say, wait a second, I need to cut back a little bit. Okay? That's how to try to simplify it for individuals, is saying, just look at your own finances, where's your checkbook balance at? Where are you at? If it's continuing and going down, then I need to cut back. If it's going up, maybe I can go buy a new car. Jay, I don't know how to answer the question of saying, I'm a finance guy, CPA, and everybody knows my state auditor's office, director of state audit over the state agency audits, financial, the CAFR for the state of Washington, $10 billion of federal dollars. I did fraud investigations and I stood on a stand and testified for a day and a half. The lady went to prison for 12 years, okay? I'm not making up numbers. I'm just saying these are the facts that I have with the information I have at this point.
Well, it's just one, it just seems like when you go in, for example, into negotiations, if this side has this much that you're getting and this side, there's reality down here, well, it doesn't work. I mean,
Agreed.
It ends up, and I just think the state superintendent's office needs to see if there's some way that in districts where negotiations are going on, everybody would be working with the same numbers and not some working with Tumwater having 7,000 kids and we only got 6,000.
Right.
something total.
Well, we're fortunate this year because I'll be here for a full year and we're gonna be doing the budget.
Yeah.
As we've discussed with the board, we're not doing budget capacity. Okay? If we did any, it was be very minimal for donations that the buildings
Yeah.
get. Okay? We're gonna have enrollment numbers that are gonna be very conservative. And we're gonna have information for this year that's gonna help us with those decisions on where we're putting enrollment and what our revenues were gonna be. I look at it as this next year, we're gonna make solid numbers, and we're gonna make sure that our forecast is solid. We're not gonna change it. It's gonna be vetted. We're gonna make sure that you understand what we're gonna post on OSPI's website, and this is where we're at as a district. So people, if they want a question, if they can, but they can come to my office like several people have in the community, and ask me questions. And I've answered those, and they understand when they walk out.
Yeah. Okay, John?
I just want to thank Jim. Since he started, I've been working this guy over with requests for data. And I'll just say in our region, there are many other districts requesting Jim's tools because they're trying to make sense of it,
Yeah.
including people in his role. And so Jim is already emerging in our region as a leader in understanding this. And when he says it's complicated, I believe there are people out there that take advantage of the complicated part to serve their interest, like you said, Jay. And if you're in the political frame, that's not an unusual strategy. That happens in a lot of contexts, not just public schools.
Yeah.
The fortunate thing we have looking forward is we now do have actual data. We can't
Yes.
misrepresent our enrollment to the state. That's an auditable figure. You know, Jim and Rosemary and others who do that for us, they could go to jail if they falsify that information, and they don't do that, all right? So we're gonna have actual data. The other thing Jim cautioned me on is he said, John, the reason we're not gonna update that 4-year forecast yet is the state is gonna release what they call the F203. That's the budget building tool that the state creates for school districts. So you load your enrollment data into that tool, and it will calculate much of your costs and your revenues for you. And Jim said, John, I don't want to do a full-blown projection for the board until I have that tool to load our more accurate information into, and then I can say, this is our enrollment projection, you'll approve that. We load that, and then we'll bring back to you, here's what the F203 is saying for next year for Tumwater. And then you're gonna get a brand new 4-year forecast that will say, here's what we have to plan for based on the enrollment you've approved and the budget that OSPI says we will have. And that's how we'll roll.
Yeah, and OSPI is waiting for legislation to get done, to be able to put, because the F203 is a very complicated tool. There's a lot of algorithms in there. They have to load the MSOCs and what percentage, what dollar amount you're gonna get for MSOCs. What are they gonna do for for salaries? Is it IPD? Are they gonna go, is it 1.089 or is it 1.95? They still have to put all that information into their tool that district can then just populate the enrollment numbers, and then it generates a report that says, here's your revenues. So I know John asked me, can you update that? I said, professionally, I do not want to do that at this time. Not until that tool comes out, given some of the pressures the district has had from external parties. You know, and people just questioning what we have out there. I'd rather have solid information based on an OSPI tool that generated this for us. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, but we thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.